Yeah. Those are still. White trails. When did you do that? I've had it for.
Do you hear anything tonight?
2020. Yeah, last week I had. That's a tough trailer.
Really?
Shut it.
Hmm?
I did it.
Oh, you did?
I think it's.
I don't see it. We'll give it a couple more minutes, see if. Yes. What's next?
Right now. Like owls. So. To the point of, I can't wait till tires go, I'm getting something, like, it screams at anything someone jumps in the truck, you're just like. That's not, yeah. Well, most aggressive type, they rumble and then, you know, it sounds good. That's fine. Like I heard animals going down.
So it's. Don't know if the city's for. Everything exciting up there in your plant or?
Yeah, we have a couple of clients actually there. We're home cities, William DeLeo.
I would.
So as I try to double up. I know, it is. Exactly. But like I said, this was perfect, man, for the oven. It is, that's such a pain, there's so many semis, so much construction. I swear I was like on these off crews for 72.
My God.
Yeah, I always love the 85 miles an hour. Down the up, you know.
Wisconsin,
It's brutal.
Yeah.
They're not kidding when they have.
That's section 94, so here in Minneapolis, seems like a southern construction.
It's a full-time construction employment act.
They love me.
Like this pick up it.
Yeah.
Retired.
Yeah, exactly, seriously, right. You know, at least two more.
And they
buildings.
were.
I was thinking,
Yeah.
And they can't go.
I mean, they have their own for trying to see. Next week.
Yeah.
So the. Entrepreneurial guy, you know, this is like, buildings, what the hell, you know, he's like, well, that's pretty brilliant, what do you mean? He goes, well, who's gonna wanna buy that software company, knowing they gotta pick up all that real estate? And I'm like, part of buying the company, and I'm like, yeah, I never freaking thought of that, I'm like, that's actually kind of brilliant.
Motion to approve the minutes of our April 17th meeting, and I think we'll present to people, Brad, is that
Sorry.
any corrections or additions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved, we don't have any appearances that you know, do we?
Nope.
Yeah, okay. Move on to unfinished business, item 5A, discussion and consideration of conceptual plans and space use programming. Bray, and motion with recommendation of council for option 1 or 2 is what we're hoping to be the result of this item.
Mayor, I'll just leave it up here. Obviously, this group has already seen these two essentially largely for in the way we've got them set up. But we just kind of wait for a consensus discussion last time. We're just asking for an actual formal vote for a recommendation of council on this time. So figure for purposes of the reporting, maybe have a quick overview of the designs. I think this Bryce team can do that for us. We can have that on it, but it should look strikingly familiar compared to what you saw the last time around. We just want to make sure we had formal action on it this time. So take it away, guys.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Neil. So this presentation here kind of shows a little bit more development on that option one that we were talking about before. So basically option one would require the relocation of the site infrastructure, the well and the reservoir before it moves through. Option two, we've had an option that allowed us to be able to kind of build around the existing infrastructure and then remove it later. However, it did not save us any time on construction. It did not save us really on any square footage of the building size, and it was a very inefficient layout. Whereas option one, which is the one that we're going to be looking at here with the next development level, is a much more condensed footprint, allowing us to have a lot more space around the site for parking as well as other site amenities, and getting the ability to turn the apparatus around the fire addition. So you can see how this lays out police and civic and fire around the existing building, allowing us to centralize those shared areas, whereas in option two, the shared areas were strewn all over the building, somewhere on the first floor, somewhere on the second floor, on this wing and that wing. But option one allows us to really bring everything into a single footprint, as opposed to having a building that has three different footprints that just happen to be connected by a hallway. So the current design as shown here has not really changed that much from our April meeting. We turned the walls sort of quote unquote real. We provided real thicknesses, as well as looked at it from a code perspective to make sure that we were showing enough toilets as well as IT spaces, et cetera, et cetera. But functionally, it's still the same building as we showed in April, allowing us to essentially have the entrance at ground level. There's a two-story atrium that fronts the council chambers. Then basically all of the administration up on the first floor, once you go up the stairs, is at that level. So every admin suite essentially gets to connect from a central lobby, as opposed to having three separate lobbies, because they were three separate wings, allowing us to find a little bit of square footage reduction and efficiency by putting everyone on the same level here, and then working with the topography of the existing site to be able to provide the admin on the first floor, and essentially the police storage and squad cars on the lower level. The space use considerations we see here, Neil, if you want to go through those.
Yeah, this is just from kind of our staff group here looking through, obviously. I think, fire did, what they did a nice job in terms of projecting and knowing the use life of this building, trying to identify what might be needed at that point. I think PD and admin fell a little short in terms of what we think we might need long-term in the future. Essentially, what is shown in this design is essentially would accommodate our current staff. So there's not really any identification of additional space for any new staff in those two wings. So obviously it's a little bit like squeezing a balloon a little bit. So if we do try to identify some more opportunities for police and admin, obviously that's most likely either the shared spaces or something out of fire and the EMS section that we might need to take a look at. So we haven't fully vetted into that. We haven't really looked at that with staff, but we need to really dial in and take a look at that. We weren't going to get too far down the line on that conversation until we actually had the construction manager on board, so we could actually talk dollar figures along with square footage. So we have to take off either X cost or X square footage. We actually have kind of more real data, kind of base that evaluation on. But that right now, that's just the way we've got it right now. The way it is, we can just pick it up and build as it is. This layout, this would work. So it means, but again, we just said this kind of the current situation is just, we don't have that capacity in two out of our three areas for that. Certainly looking at anything, we like to, we've done a good job, I think, of maximizing the shared spaces, I think at this point. We want to make sure still want to make sure we're doing that to the extent that we can. Again, so identifying any opportunities where we can do that. Once the construction manager wants to on board with specific costs. We may have to look at something in terms of future staff. I think we've been very much focused on offices focused for most staff. I think if it's, certainly for department head level, I think we absolutely want to maintain that for security, for privacy, for those types of issues, we need to do that. Or we might need to, there might need to be for long-term future staff, we might need to just at least need to consider some sort of shared environment or a huge space. Again, that decision certainly hasn't been made yet, won't be made until we really get into some future design areas on that. And obviously there's ongoing coordination with Nichols Road improvements. We want to make sure there's some concerns on whether if we elevate Brad or either elevating the road or balancing things out so the trucks can actually get out smoothly from fire, figuring out what the best option is on that. Is there adding fill to the site versus raising the, balancing the road elevations, just making sure that they work together enough so that there's an easy transition egress for those fire vehicles on that area. So we're continuing to kind of evaluate options on that as we go.
One of the issues we're running into is the side bays here with the antique garage. We have to extend a very flat apparatus bay out for those. If we didn't have to have those garages, we wouldn't have to raise the road, basically. So that's where we're at.
Some decisions we'll need to be making on that eventually, so.
At what point, in terms of, because I think we need some changes in the way the space is allocated also. Does it make sense to do that after the construction manager comes on board? Is that the time? I just want to be sure it's not something we ought to be doing now, or.
But internally, we're working through the coordination on the civil engineering road elevation side. That's happening already.
Mhm.
And it may be some combination of raising the road, lowering the apparatus bay by putting a small ramp internal from the existing building to the addition. So we're exploring all those options right now. So that's happening behind the scenes. I think internal, I think Neil is kind of having those thoughts, at least on the admin side. We just haven't documented them yet.
But waiting to pursue doing more about those is okay, because I don't want to get too far down the road here and then. Because we know we need to make some changes.
Agreed. And I think if we want to get started on those now, there's no reason not to. If we want to have those conversations internally while we're going through the CM selection process, that seems to make sense as well. I think part of the reason for waiting for the CM to come on board and do their initial budget is we kind of want to find out, are we okay? Are we looking at this where we have to take an axe to it or a hatchet or just a little chisel? I don't think we know yet. So I think that's one of the reasons we may wait to make wholesale changes until we have a better sense of that.
I'm just thinking if we were planning on changing the way some of the space is allocated. Wouldn't it be better for them to know that in advance, but maybe not.
We can run those processes
parallel.
parallel. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I think the situation from my perspective is we can either be facing a reason for cuts simply for space needs, or we can be facing cuts for reason of budget. So we don't know which one is
But
going to
we
be
could
the
do the
big driver.
space needs ones.
I mean, conceptually, I would
Right.
say yes, but I mean, because I think it's not just a matter of, and as much as I would love to look at these guys, it's like, guys, just take that, just remove that square out there. Well, we've got
Well,
some.
obviously, that's their.
Yeah, we
their
got,
role,
and
but-
well, essentially, because of the existing structure, that is a lot of our challenge in terms of how things are fitting in the
Yeah.
space, because we're trying to reuse the existing building, so we have a foundation and a structure that we're trying to still deal with. So I think that presents some challenges, while we're talking a little bit about that, in terms of, so how we do that. So again, I just want to make sure, I think in my opinion, having the CM on board, we're having that discussion is going to make it actually more efficient. It'll prevent us from redoing something. We could do this, we could realign everything space-wise, ways. It's also like, whoops, it's still too expensive. Now we need to go
Well, then
back.
we need to cut.
We need you to take more off, and so,
And I'm
I
not
think
saying
yeah.
cutting, I'm just
Yeah.
saying
yeah, so.
reallocating.
Yeah, I mean, CM's gonna help you have a much better list to pick from,
Yeah.
for specific items to remove. We're gonna base it on square foot costs for the most part, because we're not able to go out and get actual pricing on
Right.
things like they are, so. They're definitely gonna help that process and help us make decisions internally.
Back to this.
Can we go through the revenues?
And also to remind everybody, kind of what this building was, looking like when we, last met, but also, adding a little bit more detail based on some of the feedback we've received. You can see that these renderings are a little bit more polished than what we showed the last time, allowing us to bring a little bit more life into the building to get people thinking about what this building could possibly be. Again, without making any wholesale changes, knowing that as we move forward through this process, inherently shifting some things around, making the building look more quote unquote real is the direction that we're taking this, but at the level of development that we're at right now, this is really a sort of polished diagram of the building. So you can see that the first view that we had was the building approach. That was sort of how when a pedestrian gets onto the site, the directly outside of the community center, that would be that little main plaza that we had tying the community center to the new civic center here. And then to the right of the picture, you can see that would be the main drive. And in option 1, we would have a dedicated drive without parking on it, whereas option 2, you were parking in that main drive. Whereas in option 1, you have a dedicated parking lot that's separate from that main drive. Looking at the opposite side of the site, basically on the northwest corner, you can see right now it's kind of that dead end that leads to the elementary school. But in option 1, allowing us to kind of turn that into a more circle drive, so you're not dead ending it, you're able to regrade it and use it as an actual parking lot. You can see the police program to the left is pretty readily identifiable. They have actual windows looking out over the property, whereas in option 2, they really didn't have windows that were identifiable from the property. They were kind of stuck in a back corner. So this gives the police an identity on the building that also uses the language of the building, the rest of the building, to feel like it's part of a whole. Nichols Road, as you move up the hill, we want to make sure that as we move forward with this design, we identify this corner as one of the key design elements of the building. It's very prominent. It is also the seat of city council. It is also your main double height aha space that identifies this building as being belonging to the community. We were showing a diagram before that showed essentially just a glass box, but you can see we're starting to articulate a little bit more, showing where we can put windows, where we can put blank walls. And as we move forward and figure out how you're actually going to use the space, that will also continue to change and evolve. When you get to the top of the hill, this would also be a really prominent part of the site. This is sort of kitty corner from that intersection where the two main roads meet. So looking back down Nichols Road, the library would be off to the left, utilizing the bend of Nichols Road to create that city admin facade down at the lower left hand of the elevation, and then that turns into the fire department side. So by putting a window where you can actually see that historic apparatus, kind of identifying this is where the fire department starts, right? But having one element that ties all of that together using the roof line of the city administration building that then ties into the fire department, allows us to really, tie these three different elements together, architecturally making it look like one building. Again, option 2 that we showed the last time, it was much more difficult trying to tie those pieces together architecturally. And then at the top of the hill, Schluter at Nichols, this would be your apparatus bay. This would be the fire department. The sleeping the sleeping units are up above the admin apparatus, and then you can see the tower that we have for the hoses to dry them. We've also provided a little house on top of that could house potentially the Dane County emergency horn, or it could provide a house for IT, et cetera,
And
as
the
we.
tower for the radio station.
As we move forward with developing where those are going to be and the time of construction for those elements. We can either identify them as parts that we can design into the building, or if they have to be separate from the building. That's still an open question at this
To your
point.
point, well, this would likely be one of the first phases built, would be building this direction. So
Mhm.
building the new communication host tower first, before we take the old one offline,
Makes
should
sense.
limit the downtime as we. There'll be some, because I think some of our Dane counties right out here, if I remember correctly. But we'll work that out as we get through that year of design.
And how many vehicles is there space for in the fire department base?
We've got 6 bays, doubled up, so.
So that's
that would be
12. And that includes,
Depending on the size, like the
Yeah.
aerial takes up a full bay basically and things like that, but it's a traditional 6 pull-through base station. Plus 1 historic bay and 3 command vehicle bays.
okay, so the trucks that the command drives are in a separate,
Yep, intentionally, they're smaller scale, more cost effective to construct.
on the left.
right, so we have 12 bays for trucks and ambulances, is that what you're saying?
Correct. Chief, correct me if we're misstating that, but I believe that's.
Well, no,
what we're
I
at.
mean, like you say, the aerial will take a full bay.
Yep.
And then, there are things like our light tower and stuff that could be behind some of the other bays. The ambulances always having back to back so that they could both go each direction. The 2 engines and the ladder, and then, like I say, the light tower and things like that. So, I think this would currently meet our needs and also any future needs.
And then just looking at the elevation of the building, this would essentially be standing across the street just to the east of the library. I know that one of the projects that you're gonna be doing on this site is to put in a shared use path. So we're kind of showing what that would kind of look like from just off the shared use path here. But using the slope of the building or of the site itself to really create a prominent building on the civic side, but also not necessarily having too overpowering of a size of a building for the site. The site really does offer some really awesome opportunities to be able to play with that site and keep the
It's nice
building
to hear it's not all terrible.
2 stories. No, it's a very cool site. And when you build on it and after the paint of construction is done, you're gonna be like, wow, this is amazing, glad we kept it here, but it's not going to be a painful construction in some way, shape or form. Which is one of the reasons why I would like to get a CM on board so they can help us with the most efficient phasing based on not only while you're still using the building, but as we're adding onto it.
Mayor, if I could just add one more thing, please. Part of the rationale that with big bays, so we can actually drive through. So-
Right, no, I get that.
So we don't have to back in, so there may be some vacant spaces behind the engines. But that's just so we can facilitate getting in and out.
Not really make it, yeah.
Well,
It's you're being able to.
I don't know what the depth of that bay is, but we have one engine that's 42 feet long, the ladder's 50 feet long, so
Right,
it takes up significant space.
and those bays on the far right, some of that is where this house is, it's built where the house is next door, is that
A
right?
lot of the circulation behind those bays is on the property that was acquired where the residential is. Allowing us to push the bays far enough back that we get a full apron in front before Nichols. So
HVAC, solar, are they gonna go on top of that? Are they gonna be shielded by something? Or-
And that's a really good point. One of the benefits to option 1 was that there was a more consistent roof height that allowed us to put more solar on the roof than option 2 would have allowed.
And, but what about visually, HVAC unit, those things, is there gonna be an added structure to shield those from view on top of here, or are we not gonna see them? Because
Some of that we may actually be able to get into the existing basement because there's a lot of open open space down there that's hard to program for. So we're hoping to get a lot of that mechanical indoors if possible. Obviously, in the winters of Wisconsin, that's a better way to build.
Maintenance guys
Um,
appreciate that.
But if there are any units that end up on the roof, we'll make sure that they're far back from the street and are screened. So you really won't know that they're there.
Sadly for the solar though, this is the south west portion of the building, which is the most prominent for solar, so you can't shroud it from this side.
Well, and I would argue that you don't want to shroud it. I mean, I think it's great that people know where you're getting your power from. Especially, I mean, we've done that in a couple buildings now, and people love to see it. They love to see what's actually produced.
It's pretty low profile by
It
the
is.
time you
Really
build your
do.
road edges off.
Yeah.
If not seeing them from a very specific vantage point to something that we're concerned about in the future, we can also work that into the design as we move forward.
If you give tours of the host tower, you will be able to see all of the solar.
You'd always put a little parapet wall around.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways.
Solar is not as unattractive as it used to be. It's really low profile and I think we can do it well and not have it be unattractive.
And they tend to hide all the cabling now in the inverters, so you don't see any of that. All you see is the panel.
If you ever get out to Forest Edge, we did a school there that's completely covered in solar panels on the roof, and you can't see a lot of them. But the ones you can see, I think, are purposeful.
They're not objectionable at all.
And at this point in our development, again, we haven't brought electrical, HVAC, structural on. So this is all very conceptual. This gives us a direction to move forward with, but the building will inherently look different than what you're seeing here when we're done with the whole process. But it gives us the idea of how big this building is going to be, how it fits on the site, how we can park around it, potentially landscape around it, and how it really does, because of the fact that the site slopes down where it does around the existing building, we can create a building that fits into the existing community fabric really, really well.
It's not real obtrusive in
It's
some respect.
its height ultimately is going to be comparable to the library as well as the top pitch of the community center. So I know one of the issues that was kind of brought up by the community before was, well, how big is this building going to be? And one of the benefits of the site is the ability to fit everything we need to without needing it to be 3 stories.
It does actually enhance the park, actually enhances the parking too, it actually adds parking spaces, so. It's a major benefit too with all the activity we've got going.
If you believe us, architects can draw accurate parking lots.
The civil.
We'll see exactly where we ended up.
There's your roof number.
And all of these benefits that we are talking about are most well taken advantage of in this option over option 2. So I hope this was able to illustrate kind of how we can continue to move the project forward in parallel with getting a CM on board. But as we said before, it would be good to make sure that we know where our goalposts are currently based on this design. And as I said before, we still don't have our consultants really diving into the building yet. Obviously, HVAC and electrical are going to be a big portion of the cost of any project. So getting a CM on board would allow us to make sure that we're designing to the budget that everybody agrees upon, and we have eyes on what that is.
Neil, I guess we'll turn it back to the committee for questions, conversations on this, or just a reminder, I think we're looking for action tonight, is that?
Yeah, I think you'd like to have, this is okay to get asked council this is just simply the first step for council to be like, yeah, to make sure we're on the right path here to move this forward. Again, we're very clear, trying to be careful, this doesn't mean we're this isn't approving the project, this isn't, we haven't even, so we have the construction and everything on board, but just in order for us to actually get really some hard design-based data, real design-based processes and things, which is kind of the logical we need to be at right now, so.
Also the cause and effect for the public works department with the well.
Right.
That process moving.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody have any questions or?
I move recommendation to council for option one.
Second.
Any further discussion? Questions?
I had just one question
Yep.
about the site plan. I don't know if it's appropriate to raise it now or not. I think it was on slide 5, shows the layout of the parking lot and stuff. This might just reflect my ignorance of the site and the fact we're not looking at an actual survey, but. I was curious on the northeast side of the building where that comm tower is. I'm just wondering, is it possible to actually connect the lower parking lot with the upper parking lot? So that if police wanted to exit out to the right using that upper parking lot, like, let's say it's the all city swim meet and you've got all kinds of cars down there below. And the police need to get out of the garage and get out quickly. It would be nice to be able to drive uphill and exit out that other road. And
Yeah,
and the other thought was if you were moving snow, it'd be nice to push snow downhill to get it offsite in the winter as well.
We're still waiting on the final boundary survey.
Okay.
Because the existing building is very tight.
I know, that's
So
what I
we
was
may
saying.
not have the room
Yeah,
to do that, but there's also a 12-foot grade change, so.
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of things we'd be playing with. I think that would be.
it would add a lot of
I mean, if we could
versatility
do
if
it,
it's
yeah.
possible.
Yeah, as long as it would be ideal, as long as it's behind the gate, right, then it wouldn't matter, because the typical users couldn't get onto the fire apron, for example, but yeah, we can explore that.
And at this point, we just didn't wanna overpromise something based on how tight it was getting to the site.
Yeah, and
So-
you know, you can't really tell until you have a real survey to work with, so, yeah.
But that's definitely something we'll take a look at.
Which hopefully should be done
Fairly soon.
in the next week or so.
Good suggestion.
Any other questions?
Okay, all in favor of option 1, say aye.
Uh,
So I want to ask about option 2. And I think Brad told me that all the underground soil testing and everything came through
Our,
clean, is that right?
so the soil testing looked good for foundations and everything, and then the environmental assessment came through clean outside of proximity issues with the known existing buried landfill. And so during excavation, it needs to be monitored. Doesn't say by anybody official, just the contractor. So-
Yeah, if we come across hazardous materials or an old dump, we'll have to have an environmental engineer come in and test what's there. If it's really old and just able to be disposed of naturally, it'll be a cost, no doubt.
Yeah.
But we'll bear that cost. The only time we ever get into real issues is if it's so active that it's producing methane. Then sometimes we can still build there, but we have to kind of go back and redo the electrical system to put in. Sounds crazy, but spark proof switches and things to, yeah, we've got active methane, we're not gonna produce any sparks, so it's done. And we just won't know, and if we get nervous about it based on that, maybe once project is approved, we do some more aggressive borings or excavation where we think it might be. To be a little more proactive, to know what we're dealing with.
But so far, things look okay.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen anything as a red flag at this point. Asbestos testing has been done through here and nothing out of the ordinary there. There is some, right, but nothing unusual. So as part of the very high level budgets, we've been assuming that we're gonna take all asbestos out of here.
Right,
Whole roof comes off, brand new roof, so even the existing building that would be remain and remodeled would be, I'll say somewhat like new, because all the old would be removed, new mechanical, electrical, all asbestos gone, new roof. Et cetera, so you're really getting a new building, but taking advantage of the square footage we have here.
So Brad, is that just mitigation from the old landfill that's seeping over, that they detected that?
yeah, yes, it's whatever they buried at one point in time in the 50s. Is seeping out.
Brad, but that was detected and not detected in the soil borings, correct? That was detected in the phase 1.
Yeah, that was detected in the landfill area. Phase 1 was only the area within where we're actually doing construction.
Good.
And they didn't detect anything.
So more just a proximity.
Yep.
So proximity thing.
Yeah.
All right. We move on to the next item, B. Discussion and considerations of project delivery options and request for qualifications for construction manager and owner's rep. Again, looking for a motion with recommendation to council. Neil, you wanna
Yeah, to start off, obviously, I think in your packet was, the draft that Brian put together for us. Looking for comments on that. I think the way we got it presented right now is, yeah, the construction manager. Or I don't know if we have.
It's option 2 in your packet.
Yeah, so we had that. Just kind of looking forward to, seeing if there are any comments or questions regarding the draft RFP or RFQ. This is something we'd probably be asking this group to participate in the interviews with. So this would be, obviously, we'll make sure that this body would be comfortable with what is presented here. Conversation still on the staff level, I think with the mayor, still the opportunity to look at an owner's rep if we feel we need additional technical expertise at some point. So we're still continuing to evaluate that, but at this point, we think we do want to definitely move forward with getting a construction manager on board that would allow us to proceed with getting the detailed cost estimate. So, do you guys want to do any quick overview?
No, I think the big piece of the process here is what you have in front of you is a request for qualifications. It's important that we're not ignoring the financial aspect of it. But the goal here is to get qualifications from firms that have the experience doing public sector construction management work, hopefully work similar to what we're undertaking. Shortlist from let's say we get 6 or 7, shortlist down to 2, 3, or 4 that have the geography, the qualifications, the team proposed is impressive to us as a group. Then ask those entities for a fee proposal. The main reason is we ask them for a lot. We ask them for a detailed monthly breakdown. We ask them for cost. And I don't know that it's fair to put 7, 8, 9 firms through that if we're gonna rule 5 or 6 of them out from the beginning. It also prevents somebody from not making the short list. Coming open records, requesting the financials, and then coming back saying, the city is spending $1 million more on construction management services than if they hired me. That's not super helpful either when we're getting a process started. So those are a couple lessons learned as we've gone through this process many times with public sector entities as to why we think the qualifications first, fee second. Again, I don't want you to leave here thinking the cost of their service doesn't matter. It will be a very important
Right.
factor we take into account as a group. So we just don't want it to be the primary driver the first day we look at qualifications.
And how long does that process generally take?
There was a timeline. Did you give them the full RFQ? I don't have it in
Yes.
front of me. I apologize. So there is a preliminary timeline shown in there. I don't know if we adapted that for council approval or not, Chris. Did we? We did. So we pushed that back a little bit.
So it's released June 18th with selection qualifications due July 9th. Notification of shortlisted members July 18th and 19th. Interview of shortlisted, it's the day of July 31st. So we can make selection then. At some point in time after that.
Findor on board already?
Oh, we placed one name. We've had about 7 or 8 companies reach out to us as media started to make some mention of this project. The other part we're also gonna do is put an ad in what's called the Daily Reporter. It's the Wisconsin Construction Trade newspaper. We'll put that advertisement in. The city has the ad as well and can publish it in your local required publication as well. So we are by no means limiting the list to those that have expressed interest. We're gonna directly send it to them because they have. But we're also gonna advertise it for anybody else that just doesn't happen to be aware yet and wants to participate.
Do we ask folks, what items they'll self-perform versus, what are some of the interview questions that are not gonna be in?
We're gonna ask a lot about how would you as an organization give us a budget that's reliable from what the information you have, right? You're seeing what we're gonna give them. We're gonna give them a little more. We're gonna give them a lengthy description of what our system expectations are and quality and things like that. So what we call conceptual cost estimating, right? We generally trust that any of them can give us a really good estimate once we've drawn all the plans to 100%. That doesn't do you a lot of good or us a lot of good through the process. So I think conceptual cost estimating, how they approach it, the depth they take it early in the process, who's leading that effort are really important questions that we're gonna have. We're gonna wanna meet some prospective team members who are gonna be your project managers during the construction process. We often wanna ask for who the project superintendent's gonna be, the critical role to the success, who's on the site every single day. It's a little unfair to them to say, maybe a year and a half from now, who are you gonna have available to start a project? we often ask, maybe kind of give us 2 or 3 sample resumes of the caliber, the experience level of superintendent that you would commit to providing to the city. So those are just a couple of
So
topics.
those are more interview questions
Yep.
rather than the RFQ part.
Correct. We do, I think, ask for self-perform work. We make it clear in the RFQ that they will be allowed to bid on the self-perform work. They're not guaranteed any self-perform work. Any category of work that they want to bid on
It's too much.
must be bid to the city along with any competing bids. So there's no funny business of Acme Construction gets a bid from Jane's Construction and just changes their bid once they see it. We can manage that by taking the bids direct.
So you've been through this process before with multiple. And what are some of the lessons learned that we should remember?
I hit on one earlier of don't ask for fee too early because it can come back to bite you. The other one I would say is we are hiring the basis of the selection will be qualifications partnered with fee being percentage for overhead and profit, for insurance, for bond. And then some monthly costs for personnel, on-site expenses, et cetera, et cetera. It isn't a bid. When we open those envelopes and we see one is 1.6, one is 1.4, one is 1.2, it doesn't mean that the 1.2 is automatically the most cost effective. Because we have to look at all the durations. Are they comparing apples to apples? Really, those become the basis for negotiation of their fees and general conditions throughout the entire partnership. If suddenly we hire the 1.4, and I'm making these up, obviously, the firm that says it's gonna be 1.4, and the first time they deliver a budget and the fee and general conditions is 2 million, we're gonna say, whoa, we haven't changed anything, what happened, where did that extra money come? Maybe there's valid reasons for it, okay, but we at least have a baseline from which we negotiate and can hold the CM partner honest on the fee and general condition side. I would also generally say, focus on your project manager and then the potential superintendent. Those are critically important roles. Once we're under construction, worry a ton about who's doing your conceptual cost estimating and who is going to commit to really diving deep into something that doesn't have cabinetry drawn, doors drawn, finishes shown. That we need somebody who's really going to commit to preparing a thorough budget, not a cost per square foot budget, early and regularly updating that throughout. To keep us honest, to keep the city honest, we're not letting scope creep, and if we are, we're getting called on it as a team. Once a month, not when bids come in, oh, well, we were worried about that, we need a budget from you every month, so. Those are all a little bit anecdotal, but those would be the lessons I would say we've learned, and some of those are the advantages of having that partner on board as well.
They'll also help you build soft costs into
Yeah,
that,
true.
so the owner costs, and that's something that you need to make sure is in the overall budget.
I know it'd be more of a construction manager, but is there anything in there that a sub can't hire a sub, okay? So all of a sudden, I'm the subcontractor, I get the bid, and I'm gonna go out and hire another sub to do that work, which I've been in construction before, and it's come back to bite people pretty bad.
It will depend on the trade, so when we also say that the owner, being the city in this case, gets the ability to say, what are the trade packages? So this is a lesson learned, one of the games that so Wisconsin's got this big general contractor community, we've got these big CMs, but they also put work in place. They do concrete, carpentry, masonry, steel erection, et cetera, et cetera. So before we started really kind of controlling these packages, they would suddenly release a package that was all the categories of work that they bid on. And the only people that would want to or even be able to bid against them were all their major competitors who are never going to bid against them because they're not going to work for them. And so that's another lesson learned where we require them to separate out concrete from masonry, from steel, et cetera. That said, there are categories, electrical, for example. There are really good electrical contractors who don't do low voltage. We like to see that as a package. We don't want the electrician saying that the low voltage is not in their category. It is, that's a package altogether. So we don't exclude it. There's not a ton of it, but I use electrical as an example because often an electrical contractor will hire a subcontractor, will hire a low voltage subcontractor to do that work.
I guess what my thing is, okay, you're going to drywall, well, this guy's too busy that they've hired, okay, so he's gonna sub it out to another contractor. Now, the contractor that was hired is not paying the subcontractor
That's doing all the work.
Yeah, there will not only be payment and performance bond requirements, but we'll also have lien waivers with every payment application, so. Is there risk there? Yes, we're insulating you from that risk through the use of payment and performance bonds and to a certain extent lien waivers. Very good questions. So again, just this action item, we're looking for a recommendation to take this to council as well, is that correct?
To approve the RFP.
The RFQ for
Yeah.
construction management. Okay, correct.
So who monitors the lien waivers and, you know, the monthly pay requests, isn't it?
They come through our office. The construction manager is responsible for managing all of them from their subs. And then they package it all into one application for payment. It comes through our office first, then comes to you. We've got a team member who manages that internally on our end.
Second.
Are there any other questions about the RFQ? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Is that Echo Bussy?
Yeah.
Do you have anything for new business or?
I do not, it's just, I think we talked about the one slide and with the space use things, and I think in terms of the overall timeline, the only note I would say is. Obviously, we are going through the operating referendum survey right now, and we'll be making a determination on the operating referendum in August. With the idea of having the operating referendum, the operating one on the ballot in November. Obviously, I think that while not directly tied together, certainly the outcome of that particular referendum certainly could reflect on what we do next steps with this process. So just a reminder to throw that out to the group that if while they are not officially linked together, there's probably certainly going to be influence and impact.
Their own money.
On the one, right, exactly, coming out of the same taxpayer pocket, so certainly we'll be sensitive to that as we proceed, so.
Anything else?
Was there any discussion to have at this meeting about the owner's rep potential?
I don't think so, not at this point, there'd be a separate RFP, probably something we would do. Really in coordination with Mel, but something we would probably just run independently if you wouldn't decide to do that.
As a frame of reference, we just got to drop RFP's proposals in for the city of Port Washington for a $35 million public safety building. Didn't have admin, but police and fire, new build, a little more straightforward than this in terms of phasing, a little shorter duration, and those fees range from $250,000 to over $600,000. So.
And at what point have they had their CM for a while or?
Yep,
what
we've
point are they in
been
the process?
6-7 months into that process with the CM.
Okay,
Their mayor had an experience previously using an owner's rep and in this room, we're off the record, basically told other council members, if you don't hire a CM, I won't support if you don't hire an owner's rep, I won't support the project. I'm not sure the other council members were quite as sold on having them involved so early at such an expense. But the longer we wait, the less expense.
Yep.
The longer we wait, the less impact they can have in building relationships with you, your team members, the project, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So there is a balancing act there.
I do want to be on the record with my opinion that I do think we need an owner's rep.
I frankly think that too, yeah. It's more a question for me, when. But yeah. I don't want to wait too long.
So question, if you've got your project manager or your construction manager, what does the owner's rep bring to the table for the city?
They're gonna bring you process and designing construction, I'll say expertise, experience more than anything else, to represent you as the owner in the room during the decision-making process. Not saying that your team members don't have the ability to make good quality decisions, not suggesting that at all, but I think it's fair to say, guys and gals, that we don't build $40 million.
Right,
We build road projects and water projects and sanitary projects all the time. Not as many building projects, so That's the lens that they may bring to the discussion, is helping you make decisions through just the lens of an owner. Obviously, we're gonna help you make those decisions, the CM is gonna help you make those decisions. Some believe it's just an unbiased eye and opinion on quality, on process, et cetera, that you would benefit from on a project of this scale and complexity.
And what have most projects you've been involved in, what have they, how have they structured it, have they used that?
5 years ago, it was very few projects getting to the financial scale that they're all seeming to get to now, post inflation and all the other challenges. The lessening of the experience in the construction workforce, as we have a lot of very experienced project managers and field personnel retiring and less experience replacing them. I think we're seeing more and more. It mainly depends on the level of expertise internally. Like every once in a while, I was with a client today who has a former mechanical contractor as their buildings and grounds director. They didn't feel the need to do it because
Yeah,
there was an
that makes
individual who spent 25 years in the trades working through these processes. Clients that don't have that experience sometimes look to this as a way, a little bit of an insurance policy, a little bit of an additional support for your leadership team in facilitating the process, making decisions and feeling confident in the decisions you make.
I know the school district has had them, and I will say I was pretty involved when we did our library expansion back 20-some years ago, and Frank, Paul Ament kind of acted as our owner's rep. He worked for Strand, or and different, and he was I think he was a project manager, I'm not sure if he's an architect, but he pointed out several things. Changes that were made that made things work more efficiently, we save money on, that's just kind of his own volunteer thing.
The key to them being successful is if they tell you they're gonna save you more money than they're gonna charge you, don't believe them. Because that's not true and it shouldn't be the goal. The goal isn't for them to cheapen everything, right? The goal is for them to be paid for the service they're providing and allow you to make good decisions, not just the goal of driving the cost of everything down. Where appropriate, great, but that's not the only motivation of that role. And the other is that their motivation isn't to create fires, to put out the fire, to come to you and say, isn't it really good that you brought an owner's rep on board? That fire would have turned into an inferno if I wasn't here. There are some that do that. It is not a successful process. And behind the scenes, we'll tell you if we're leaning in that direction towards one that does that, because that will become, it just becomes a fight and nobody leaves that project feeling like it was successful.
So in the last 5 years or so that you referenced, how many projects has your firm been the architect and owner's rep?
We have never been the third party owner's rep, right? Because we really can't be an independent owner's rep if we're providing the architectural and engineering services.
Yeah.
Again, maybe half or more clients don't bring an owner's rep on, and we probably do a little bit more hand holding and a little bit more direct owner engagement through that process because they don't have that.
Okay.
And we don't care, like that's just our role. Our role is to educate and help you make decisions if you don't have that team member on board.
Because past discussions, Chris, you were saying that you guys could fill that role.
Yeah, that's what we do. I mean. we're
If there isn't
architects.
an independent
Right.
third party, we're gonna
Okay.
basically act in that role for you throughout the process.
Okay,
We're designing the building, we're on site during construction management. During construction, we're making sure that, they're following our specs and our drawings. And we're letting you know all of that by communicating.
So what would an owner's rep? Give me some examples of what they would do.
So I have an example. If, for instance, the construction manager believes that something should be installed in this way with these materials or otherwise, and the architect disagrees, and then it comes to the city and the city has to say, which do you think should happen? It's not necessarily against their design, but the construction manager does it this way and it's not against building codes. And then the city has to be put in the position of saying, well, I think you're right or you're right, and I don't think that we want to be doing that. Also, the city staff is capped. We have more than what we need to be doing in terms of our roles and responsibilities. And to add in the daily interaction or weekly even would be.
It's another set of eyes.
Yeah.
Everybody has different opinions and, who is right, you know, or what's the best way to do it, and what's the best materials to use for the application you're gonna do it for.
At an even simpler level, it's just helping you facilitate decision-making, for example, during the design and engineering process. When we leave a 2-hour design meeting and say, here are the 5 action items for the city. You really are charging the owner's rep. With herding your group of cats together and saying, here are the 5 decisions we have to make, you guys make the decisions with their input, and then you don't have to communicate them, right? It's their responsibility to communicate back to us. Seems small, but take that times a 12-month design and engineering period, times 2 meetings every month, times it will compound itself in terms of the pressure it puts on your team to do their day-to-day jobs.
And the fact that they understand.
They understand the
We aren't
building
gonna
well.
understand
Yep.
what, but you know, there's gonna be things we aren't gonna understand. We're not.
And I think another way to say it, is it does not absolve the city of making those decisions.
You're still making the decision.
Right.
I don't want you to think you suddenly don't
Right,
have a
right,
lot of time
right.
committed to this. That's not gonna change.
The city will make the decision, the owner's rep communicates it,
Right.
and the owner's rep fights for us on our behalf, as well as the architect. I would say it leans more on our side than the construction side, because you wanna fight for your design.
I love a good fight with the
So-
CM, but don't tell her
Right.
that. That shouldn't be public either. I'm sharing too much.
The owner's rep is who we all go through to coordinate and convey messages, and then they'll communicate with the CM. It just keeps things clean as far as communication and process.
It
If,
also,
if we wanna kind of bucket the decisions, in my opinion, the CM is a higher priority because they're gonna help us lock our budget in a little sooner.
agree.
Not saying we shouldn't keep talking about the owner's rep thing, but we can have that decision. Let's get a CM on board. Take a breath,
Agreed.
kind of regroup as a group, a team, and talk more about owner's rep, if that's okay with the group.
Yeah.
I don't think it hurts the process at all if you're comfortable with that.
I feel like it also limits staff liability for making the wrong decision accidentally.
We get professional opinions.
Right,
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
so.
Anything else? Would the next meeting then be on July 31st, these interviews, or is that something not the whole committee, or what, how does that work?
Yeah, I think we probably want to use this committee as the interview team like we did.
But the,
Selecting Matt and these
Yeah.
guys too. I think we want to use similar process. So I think staff. would maybe
tentatively,
do-
we're talking the 31st.
I'd say staff plus Matt's team, sitting down, kind of vet through the qualifications, come with a recommendation of 3 or 4. And then, yeah, run through some interviews again.
Hold a bigger room for that one, because these CMs tend to show up with a lot of people.
Make sure it's at the library.
So let's get the library. on.
So we'll be actually meeting before the 31st, though, to vet, to lower the number, or how is
I
that?
think Mayor, you and Neil can work that out.
Yeah, I think we did last time, Mayor's, we had staff actually said, here's all of them. We think we brought in, I think the top 4. To the
Yeah,
group,
we
and
had
kinda
a
sitting in and said,
Rubric that we use.
yeah, we said, here's how they were scored, and presented that. Said, you guys want, are you good with just those 4? Do you want us to go add 1 more, go 1 less? So we may do that by, either meeting, would probably you do that by email. And then actually, I think the next meeting would be actually scheduling we probably sent some preliminary questions out to your point. What do we want to ask these guys when we got them in here?
I think that's
Yeah.
great.
Have that conversation and kind of have that list set up before we jump into those meetings, so we know exactly what we're gonna be asking, and then it's consistent, we're asking, we gotta ask them all the same thing. So we have apples to apples for comparing the responses.
So send out like the draft RFQ and the questions ahead of time to the committee. So like make,
Well, we've got the RFQ, yeah, so we would have I think the questions we wanna have. We wanna send out the response, they actually like our rubric that we would use to evaluate the qualifications.
We can send, the qualifications, that's fair, yeah.
Yeah.
So that next step of interview, we've got a memo that we've drafted already, just anticipation of, here's 9 topics we'd like you to cover.
Yeah,
We'd also like your thoughts if we're missing a topic there that you as a group feel should be added. That'd be
Like
another
we had
thing.
everybody do a presentation.
Yep.
kind of saying- I just want to be sure, given it's summer.
Yep.
That we know if we're talking about the 31st or if it's some other date that people got it on their calendar.
We built it
Works
based
for 'em.
on council approval, which night? 19?
No, I think it's Monday, right?
Or is it already Monday that we're taking both this recommendation and request to go to qualifications to council on Monday night?
yeah, as long as committee's good on that, we haven't finalized the agenda.
We might as well, let's get ready for it.
Yeah, Mayor, if you're good with
Yeah,
that. we
what
can
are you
certainly-
thinking we need to do for that meeting?
Yeah.
I mean, are we gonna have Brady there presenting something about the design? It's not all the council have seen.
Yeah, are you
What
guys
are
available to
we-
come in to do that? Yeah, so I mean, I think we'd be nice to have them to just do a one, give them the full show, so to speak, in terms of what we did here, just to let them ask some questions and.
Do we want to have option 2 shown on that presentation to say, we looked at these options?
I think just very basically, at least conceptually, just like 1 or 2 slides, like
Real
this is
high
what we looked
level.
at, yeah.
That's fair.
They
Maybe just
definitely
the
ought to be
site
able to see
plan.
something.
Sure,
Yeah.
the site plan alone shows how efficient it is, you know?
You just darken those photos up a little bit.
Storm cloud.
Yeah,
I was gonna give you a little brief call, that we only have gray cars and 3 blue cars in our rendering software. I don't know if anybody else noticed that.
Our rendering software is actually run by a bunch of German people, so if you don't want a whole bunch of Audis and like red colors, that's the most subtle cars that they have available.
Okay, well, we think we've got next.
Yeah.
We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Thank you all. We really appreciate
Yes,
your
thank
input.
Thanks, everyone.
thanks, sir.
Yeah, that's good.
It's good. Win the lottery.
Summer, you know. I did find some of this today until it rains.
Yeah, right. The 1.5 actually all come out of.
Right, and that's why we definitely want to see.
Send you a picture.
If we get